All right, welcome to a special episode of the Mike Sennello Show. We are going to be doing a very, very informal overview of the Cherniske Road project. In fact, to be more specific, the Cherniske Road Bridge project. Again, this is going to be extremely informal, so if you guys have questions, shoot them in. Mike Boucher, I understand you're going to be watching. Decided to start just a few minutes early. So yeah, tonight's episode is just going to be an extremely informal review of everything going on with the Cherniske Road Bridge situation, or as it might alternately be titled, Local Politics is a Simpsons episode. So I have to elicit a few caveats before we get started here tonight. I wanted to spend, normally when I do these sort of things, as you guys know, I come in prepared with massive amounts of data, massive amounts of video collages. So first things first, we're just going to go straight to the YouTube video because I didn't have time to cut up the video. I didn't have time to go back in time and do a lot more in terms of providing you guys with sound clips and video clips of what's gone on from day one with this project. So you're going to have to just take my word for how this project has gone along. Again, I understand Mike Boucher is watching. If Mike, that's the case, I would love to have you chime in. And if you want to come on to have a back and forth about just the facts of the matter, I'm going to be interjecting opinion. And when I give you guys the backstory, I may be full on poisoning the well. But it would be great to have somebody who's been intimately involved with this particular project since its inception, which was freaking years ago at this point, have not even broken ground on this project, which by my estimation of things should have, and Mike can probably correct me if I'm wrong, if we didn't have the pushback from the residents on Cherniske Road and then on the immediately surrounding roads regarding this bridge, and what is basically an aesthetic complaint, we would have already been done with this bridge. This isn't a regulatory issue. This isn't a financing issue. This is the politics of the squeakiest wheel gets the grease, right? And I am not a supporter of that ideology. I'm not a supporter of that argument. I'm not a supporter of that line of thinking. I don't think that that's how governance should be conducted at any level and in any form. You should be doing what is right and good because it is right and good. And when you're in an elected office, your election is your mandate, right? When you win in a landslide, again, I'm going to keep pointing to the scoreboard until I don't have to, until there's not a reason for me to point to the scoreboard. When you win 73-27, that's your mandate. That's the people speaking on your behalf and saying, in the case of Pete Bass, Pete, we have your trust. You've earned our trust. You've earned our respect, and that's reflected in the ballot box. And the result, of course, is a landslide victory. And that is Pete Bass's mandate right now. The fact that he won by that wide a margin, right? The fact that he won it all is his mandate, right? So we're going to go back in time to, I wish I could give you the exact date. We're going to go back in time several years. And again, normally what I would have done is spent Friday afternoon and Saturday, the whole day, prepping for last night's show, and most of Saturday also prepping in terms of research for this show, and so I could provide you guys with the documents and the receipts that we normally show. Unfortunately, we had a huge snowstorm. Well, a huge snowstorm in the sense of it took up from 1 a.m. Saturday for me till 1 a.m. Sunday for me. Right, because that's just what I'm doing now. I'm taking on plow jobs, and grateful to the community who recommended me and who connected me with these new clients. Happy to have served these new clients. Grateful for these references, but it did take away from basically all of the time I would normally devote to preparation for not only last night's stream, but for tonight's stream in particular as well. So that means that on Sunday, I was ramming through as fast as I could to get the prep work done for Sunday night's show. And because I didn't have any time to run through any of that, that's a huge part of why we ran so far over last night and why I've kind of set this aside for tonight. Because this may wind up not being that long of a stream, but this is going to be probably in the area of 20 to 30 minutes at least. And I didn't have time to go over it. So, to give people an idea of where we're talking about first, before I full-on poison the well, let's bring up Google Maps so people know about the bridge that we're talking about. So let me go up to my Google Maps, and we're going to zoom in. This is New Milford, right? In the center here, we have the center of town, New Milford, right? We have the green. We can even turn this on into satellite view so you guys can get a better idea of what's going on here. Yeah, there you can see the ball fields over at Young's Field. Hopefully you guys can see my cursor as well. And we've got the New Milford Green. We've got Main Street. So let's make this simpler and get rid of all that and zoom out a little bit. So if we go down Wellsville, right? We go down Wellsville until it turns into Marial Road. Marial Road forks off to the right here, but we're going to skip that. We're going to go up West Meeting House. So as we go north into Marial along West Meeting House eventually does come effectively to an end at Barker Road, and then it veers off towards South Kent, at the intersection of Barker Road. We're going to turn right onto Barker Road. Barker Road at the intersection of Squire Hill turns into Cherniske Road. So you're going to go past the Upper Marial Cemetery on your right on Cherniske Road until you come across this rinky-dink little bridge across this rinky-dink little stream just east of Frenchman's Road. Cherniske Road then eventually turns into New Preston Hill Road at the intersection of Sawyer Hill Road. And if you take New Preston Hill Road to its terminus, you wind up in, well, I think this is technically New Preston. It's just south of Lake Warramog. So that's the beginning of Lake Warramog. The intersection of 45 is where New Preston Hill comes out. And if we were to instead take Sawyer Hill Road, this comes out on 202 out by Clamps. Everybody knows where Clamps is up on 202. I think that's still technically, is that New Milford? I can't remember if it's New Milford. I think it's still technically New Milford. Doesn't matter. The point is, I'm doing this so you guys get an idea of where it is in town we're talking. So not to denigrate the fact that this is barely in town. I'm not using this as a way to inject opinion here, but it is barely within the borders of New Milford. So there it is. And what's really cool is with this little object here, we can go street view, and you guys can see what the bridge looked like before it was closed. Okay. So this gives you an idea of what's going on here. It's a one-lane bridge that, wow. Like, man, I would not have the guts to take a big truck across this bridge. I don't see any signage anywhere saying, trucks above certain weight limit not allowed. but like you can see that this bridge is not pretty, right? This bridge is not in pretty shape. And I totally get why, despite the fact that ground hasn't even been broken, when you just from this angle alone, we can kind of see that like this bridge probably needs to be replaced. So all the hubbub that's been going on about replacing this bridge and the recommendations from DPW and probably honestly from the state about replacing this bridge, to me, seem to be well-founded. And again, this process started years ago when the guy that was in Mike Boucher, 2018 was when this all started. Yeah, right? It's 2022, and I remember this corrected info. The bridge was included in the town's capital plan in 2010. A firm was selected from bids in fall 2017, and the preliminary engineering work began that winter. No through truck restrictions have to be approved by the state, and they denied our request. That's from Mike Boucher with DPW. Again, Mike, let me know in the comment section if you want me to pull you in. I'd love to have you in. I can throw something together, I'm sure, to pull you in via voice chat in some way to have this conversation. So when you have these sort of processes, when it comes time to replace a bridge here in town, there's a very lengthy, we'll call it administrative and clerical process that has to go through, that has to take place. There's a political process as well that Mike Boucher says he's more comfortable this way. All right, so I'll just make sure I keep the chat open for Mike. So there's a political process that goes on. And in 2018, the DPW director at the time was Mike Zarba. And Mike Zarba did his due diligence in terms of the political process that's involved in all of this. Let me make sure my camera's where I need to be. Where I need to be, right? You have public hearings, you have meetings, you have signage that you have to put out, you have to warn the public, you have to go to the local newspapers and put out announcements. And Mike Zarba did all of that. And there was behind the scenes, of course, this massive engineering process where the various members of DPW have to go have a back and forth with various agencies and with various agencies of the state, right? So they have their engineering contractors, and they have their internal engineers, and they have the DPW director, and everybody's, the mayor is involved in the political end of the process in terms of making sure everything is adhering to the guidelines of that office and in conducting the executive authority that's involved in all of this, which really isn't much. It's more of just like he's there in the room. And after all of this, what you wind up culminating is a recommendation from DPW to effectively you guys, the voters, as to what is going to be done with this bridge. This was a really long and arduous process that, from what I understand, nobody attended until the absolute last minute. The absolute last minute. Way, way, way back in, I think Mike's right, in 2018, there was basically a town council meeting where the people spoke. Their public comment was held, and the handful of residents that live in and around Cherniske Road didn't like the recommendation that was coming from DPW. And Mike Zarba, I think, built a great case as to why the recommendation was there. One of the considerations, yes, was money. Many of the considerations were what was coming from the regulatory authorities on this matter, what was coming from the bureaucratic process on this matter, right? A lot of that, I think what was initially proposed was a 2-lane road rather than a 1-lane road and a double box culvert. What does that mean? It means that you pour a concrete form that's in the shape of a box, right? And that's a box culvert. And that allows water to travel through the culvert. And that's what goes underneath the actual roadway, right? And if you have a double box, that means there's just 2 of them. Now, from what I understand, the initial specs had 2 different sizes. It doesn't matter. There's no need to get into esoteric, pedantic specifics when it comes to the specs that were produced. But there was an outcry from the residents of Cherniske Road and the surrounding roads. It was really only like 6 or 7 people, and there were 3 or 4 people from that area that chimed in and said, I want the double road, right? I want 2-lane traffic. I want, it is unsafe to have a 1-lane road on that road. And a lot of the pushback was, well, we're getting 18-wheelers rolling through there. If that's the case, I have no idea how that bridge was rated for that load in the first place. And B, even the new project that was proposed, I have no idea how an 18-wheeler would have qualified for the weight limits that would have obviously been imposed on that bridge. So to me, this sounds like the actual complaint is an enforcement issue. They were statements along the lines of people go ripping through there at X number of miles an hour and they drive way too fast. Okay, well, the fact that it's a 1-lane road is what, a 1-lane bridge is what introduces the element of risk here. The fact that it's a 1-lane road is what makes it unsafe. The fact that you literally have the potential for 2 cars to be going in the same lane in opposite directions. That's the safety concern here. The fact that it's a 1-lane bridge. If the fact that it's a 1-lane bridge causes people to slow down, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a 1-lane bridge. So, again, I may be poisoning the well on this. But there was this public outcry. They didn't want to disturb the beauty of the surroundings. So the entire process basically had to be scrapped. And started over. And that's where we are today, right? That's where we are today. Last week, there was a hearing. It was a public meeting where the new DPW director, so this process has been going on so long, we're on to our second DPW director that's involved with this bridge. And by the way, there are plenty of other bridges just like this one in town that have been started and completed since then. So Mike, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there wasn't that public outcry, I have no idea how this bridge wouldn't have already been done and over with. Right? So basically what those handful of residents wanted was to just take the existing bridge and make a replica of the existing bridge. And we're going to get into the specifics of what that means in a minute here because Jack Leahy does a great job of explaining the entire situation. So the reason Jack Leahy is presenting, and I imagine this is kind of at the behest of Mayor Pass, is because all of these change orders and these nonstop delays have caused the project's price to just explode, right? So, and it's exploding at the behest of a tiny fringe and belligerent minority. So, Mike, if there's anything in the chat that you need to say that I think is wrong, sorry, Jack Healy, sorry, Jack Leahy's a friend of mine. The names are so close that I get them mixed up. It's switching an L with an H. Sorry, Jack. Sorry, Mike. Jack Healy is the new DPW. Mike Boucher. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I forgot about the Army Corps of Engineers. So this process was hung up in red tape limbo for so long that one of the things that was an element of red tape limbo was approval of the new designs that were being proposed because of the outcry at that meeting, right? At the initial outcry at the town council meeting was a complete redesign. And that meant that you had to go through the Army Corps of Engineers for some of this stuff. And it was taking so long to get these approvals from the Army Corps of Engineers. By the way, this road is closed. So this bridge is inoperable, and you have to go completely around it if you live up there, or if you want to go down that road, right? And it's not a short detour. Mayor Bass had to invoke what is effectively an emergency act, effectively, to just supersede from a legislative standpoint the Army Corps of Engineers and to permit DPW to just continue on with whatever they need to do to just get the damn project done. And we're going to be coming back to that turn of phrase. Okay, so Mike Boucher is in the chat and he's making some corrections. I don't know if there's actually any corrections here, so we're just going to go through this. Engineers, contractors, and Army Corps of Engineers. Yeah, so we've had to make this exception with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've had to go ahead and Randy DeBella did explain in the past how this was legal and how there was a way to just say, screw it, we're not going to wait any longer for the Army Corps of Engineers. We're just going to continue on with the projects. And state permits. Yes, there's a state permitting process for all of this. Again, the the whole reason that these redesigns have caused this thing to come to a complete grinding halt is because, like I said, bureaucratic and red tape hell. It's just in bureaucratic red tape hell. Mike Boucher, 3 designs so far. Yeah. Yeah, and it looks like we're probably going to be looking at a 4th one. Would have been done 2 years ago. This is what I'm saying. So when I said that this project would have definitely been done by now, yeah, not even close. This would have been done and over with by now if we had done this initially. Okay, $600K to $1.2 million. I know that, Jack, too. Yeah, okay, so we're going to get into that, Mike. We're going to get into the numbers because Jack Healy goes over it. So now that I've poisoned the well enough, let's go ahead and let's bring everybody into the meeting that I keep referring to, right? There was a meeting held on Monday night. It's a town meeting to collect the opinions of the community about the updates that were coming through. And then potentially, and then after that, at the town council meeting, there was an agenda item to spend, you're going to find out, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of ARPA funds on this project. So everybody, let's go ahead and bring everybody into the meeting. I've jumped to where the pertinent parts of the meeting are. So let's go ahead and just jump into last week's town meeting.
What's it called? Once again.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. That wasn't the actual town meeting. That wasn't the town meeting. That wasn't fair. That wasn't it. My mistake. So this is the actual meeting. Jump to the relevant point. I'll go ahead and put this into, I guess I'll put this link into the chat. Why not? So let's go to Facebook. Here's the chat. This is the video that I'm referring to. I'll go to YouTube as well. And of course, thanks everybody who's watching on both platforms. Links are in these videos description to jump to Facebook if you want to, or to jump to YouTube if you'd prefer to watch there. So this is where public comment comes in. This is where the conversation with Jack Healy, almost did it, comes in. So let's go ahead and we'll watch this video, and we'll have to pause when we need to pause to talk about it.
Okay, this was a notice of a public hearing, January 24th, 2022. There will be a community gathering to discuss and provide opportunity for input and suggestions concerning the Cherniske Bridge project in New Milford. Anyone not able to attend can send an email with any suggestions to the mayor at newmilford.org. I do have some that I'd like to give for the minutes. Before we go into public comment, I'd like to have Jack Healy, our DPW director, give us an overview of the project as it is today. Jack?
Good evening, everyone. Where it is today.
Let me pause right there. Just let me know in the chat, everyone who's watching, if you don't understand why the meeting is being held and what Mayor Bash just explained as to why the meeting exists in the first place. And we'll pause if we have to moving forward. Rebecca. They can't even spell Cherniske right. Yeah, no, actually the person who put that together, that lower third together, that was me. So I typoed Cherniske.
I guess maybe the thing I should do is just give you a real quick thing. Is this started in 2017. The town went out. The bridge has been evaluated, and it is on a regular basis. It has a poor rate. It had a poor rating. The town went out for proposals on engineering firms. The town went through its process, selected at the time a company called Anchor Engineering, which is now called Barton & Judas. In their proposal, I went through the file today. In their proposal, their original proposal was for a 2-lane bridge, a double box culvert. They had gone through, I believe, all the way through to 50% drawings at that on that bridge, and that was before I got here. When I arrived in town, I believe there was a stop on the design at that point. When I arrived, the mayor asked me if it was possible to do a single-lane bridge. We looked at it. Because the town was funding it and not the state, it was not grant funded. We had some discretion in how we did that. I worked with Barton & Judas. I had to send them a letter absolving them of the responsibility of a 2-lane bridge, and that a single-lane bridge we would meet certain standards. Those standards were to be a single-lane bridge, and it would have stop signs at each end and warning signs and whatever was required. Again, it was a double box culvert. We went through the design. Of course, while we were in the middle of design, the bridge began to fail. We thought we had a structural engineer come in and examine the bridge, found that it was failing. We put steel plates on there. We talked to the mayor. We wanted to keep the bridge open, so we put steel plates on the bridge to keep it open and safe. Subsequent to that, we continued the design, working with the design firm, and we also continued to inspect the bridge regularly. At some point in December, I believe it was December of 2020, we noticed that the abutments were shifting. We found almost daily parts of concrete that was falling off. You could see material coming from the cracks in the bridge. We again had a consulting engineer come in, structural engineer come in. Also, let me step back. We looked at the surface of the bridge underneath the plates. The concrete deck was basically powder. It had got to the point where it was failing.
So we're going to pause here, and let's see if everybody's been able to follow. So what Jack is describing is a process of several redesigns because of community outcry. And he's talking about all of the hurdles that they have the additional hurdles that they've had to jump through, the additional hoops they've had to jump through to get even to the point that he's describing, which is not the point that we're at today. The town has, the way he's described it, bent over backwards to try to keep this bridge open and to try to conform to the specs that were demanded by these people, these squeakiest wheels, if you will. So that whole explanation is just a super condensed history of the bureaucratic side of what's been going on with all of this. So again, if there's somebody that's not following along, not quite understanding, let me know in the chat and I'll keep pausing. Rebecca, haha, it's okay. It's my family name, so I'm sensitive. Yeah, Rebecca, I actually wrestled with Dave Cherniske, so I don't know why I misspelled that. I've known that road for a long time. I've known that family for a while too. So my mistake. Sorry, folks.
Based on their recommendation, we closed the bridge in end of January last year. I sent a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers asking for an emergency review of the design so that we could proceed with the construction. Today.
Okay, so the bridge was utterly crumbling, and it was forced to be shut down completely. So that's why he's gone to the Army Corps of Engineers to see if there's a way to circumvent their bureaucratic end of what their role in the process is. And he found out that there was a way to just go ahead with the project.
We have not received a response from them. We had gotten several emails that different reasons they hadn't looked at it, but we have not got a response. We continued through the final design. I was expressing concern to the mayor about the bridge being closed. We did not have all the permits in place. One of the reasons was you're waiting for Army Corps. In the summer, I was expressing concern to the mayor in our meetings that the bridge was closed and that, if there was an emergency or something, the bridge was closed, and the detours are very long.
Yeah.
The mayor, I believe, in September issued a emergency order. We put the documents together, went out to bid. There was I got feedback from residents. I went up and met with residents up there who did not like the idea of a double box culvert. The double box culvert had been originally proposed, and one of the reasons for double box culvert is for water handling.
Okay, so now we're getting feedback from the community, from the residents. Jack went out and got this feedback already. So this is part of this process that's leading up to this point. So we're not even at today's point. They didn't like the double box culvert design. This is something you're never going to see from the road. You're never going to see it. It's underneath the road. This is something that's an esoteric element of the actual design. I don't know if he's ever going to explain it, but their complaints have nothing to do with structural integrity. Nothing to do with actual engineering. Mike Boucher's just chimed in. There was a 3-foot wide hole in the westbound lane of the bridge and a 4-inch gap in one of the abutments that was getting bigger by the day. Yeah. I mean, the short version is this bridge was actually crumbling. This bridge was like one semi away from just Pittsburghing into the river.
When you build a bridge, you have to move the water. You can't just build with the water there. With a double box culvert, you take the bridge out, you put one box in, you divert the water through that box, and you can put the other box in.
So he's talking
Not
about the
doing
build
that
process. Yeah. What he's talking about there is the build process. You can put one culvert in, and that allows water through. You block off the other side, and then you put the other culvert in. You open that up, and then you've got two culverts worth of water flow.
Money. The reason for a box culvert, they felt that structurally it's less expensive. You can build a box before and just set it in place. You don't have to make the forms and everything. And two, they felt it was a faster way of doing it. And structurally, there was concern about the soil structure there.
So we have three reasons for doing it with formed culverts. So the culvert is pre-formed and precast. Therefore, you can just deliver on site, install it, and move on. Right? Real quick, real simple, real cheap. Well, not real cheap. It's the less expensive than pouring on site. And on top of that, there were concerns about the underlying soil from a structural engineering standpoint.
Based on the feedback, the amount of, we also at that point started to form the Scenic Road Committee, which was required because Cherniske Road is a scenic road. I think we had one or two meetings, but then we stopped because at that point we were getting feedback about the bridge, the double box culvert, permits, feedback from some of the state people about it, concerned. So I talked to the mayor and we stopped the design.
Okay, so we've gone through all this process to bend over backwards to the demands of the people on that road, and we've gotten to this point, and now we have to stop, and we have to kind of scrap the design and talk to the mayor.
Any changes like that would have increased the cost of the bridge. I recommended to the mayor at that point, this bridge is eligible for a state grant. I recommend to the mayor, we go for a state grant. We have started to put those documents together. I talked to the state. They they said it would be eligible. The grant is due to the state in March. So we have begun putting those documents together. We already have our cost preliminary application put together and preliminary cost figures. So that's where we are at this point.
Okay, so we've put together a grant request, and we're looking at redesigning the double box culvert setup. That's where we are right now. That's where we are today, and that's where progress has come to a halt because of this. So now we're reporting, well, not necessarily because of this, but progress has come to a halt, and now we're reporting back to basically the community in this meeting.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Sal, do we have some residents that would like to address
Here's where the fun comes.
town council for the public meeting?
Yes, Mayor. Peter Hall.
Hello, I'm a 21-year resident, and I'm impacted by the Cherniske Bridge.
I'm sorry, could you state your name? and
Peter
address for
Hall.
the record?
Peter Hall. Live on Old Mine Road. And I'm impacted by the bridge, and I would just hope that the council would take the time to go through whatever procedures there are and need to be box checked to be sure that we're doing this properly for long-term, keep our rural feeling and the one-lane road and all that. Okay? That's
Thank
all I
you.
want to say. Thank you.
So he wants to keep it a one-lane road for the purpose of maintaining a rural feeling. Okay.
Thank you.
I have a name, I don't know how to read. It's not Baron, it's someone with J, I believe, who signed up as a second person.
Just takes a
Miss-
minute, folks.
Oh boy, okay, cross your name up maybe. Yeah, that's the third one.
Is there a second person that want to speak after Mr. Bartram or Miss Bartram?
No, I just thought you guys said, I'm sorry. I just can't hear them.
No. Anybody else from the public wants to speak? I guess not.
Okay. Yep. Before we do this, Randy, can you talk a little bit about legally the courses that we've taken so far? Sure, yeah. With the bridge, as we've tried to get this bridge fixed, but have run into some headwinds with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Sure, we have.
So Randy DeBella is about to speak. He's our town attorney, so he's going to be talking about the legal side of things.
last summer, late last summer, the mayor, being a bit frustrated with the Army Corps of Engineers, issued an order pursuant to Title 21 of the statute. And he did that in order to get around the Army Corps of Engineer issue regarding the delay in even reviewing the plan. He could do that. The problem is that once the state got involved, they would not, it wasn't a state issue. No matter what we did, we cannot get around the state permitting process or the wetlands process. We have to go through inland wetlands. The Supreme Court's told us that towns are subject to the Inland Wetlands Act. But we were trying to get around the delay occasioned by the Army Corps of Engineers. In order to do that, he issued an executive order, but that would have been okay for that one particular project. But since the project changed, it was not going to be eligible for state funds. But since the project changed, the bets are off.
Okay, so remember that. So mayor issues this executive order to try to circumvent the red tape and the delays that are going on with the Army Corps of Engineers, who haven't at this point even, I'm not going to say bother, haven't reviewed the process so far. They haven't even reviewed the specs. Not only have they not issued a decision, they haven't even reviewed the specs. So to get around that, P issues an emergency declaration effectively to get around that process and to continue along with the regulatory and engineering part and design phases. Because there was outcry from the community, there was a redesign. Because there was a major redesign, the emergency order is no longer in effect. So we're from a regulatory standpoint, basically from what I can tell of things, right back at square one.
So when that change came, that executive order essentially was a nullity. And that's what happened. I don't know whose decision it was to change the project from what the mayor had ordered, but the state intervened and would not agree to that. I think that's in a nutshell is what happened.
Is that how it was, Jack?
Yeah, that's what.
Jack confirms.
So we tried to listen to the residents up there to get a one-lane bridge, which is what the residents thought I heard when I first became mayor, which would result in a double box culvert, correct, Jack?
Yes.
Then was some of the opinion of some of the residents up there to do a single-lane culvert, right, Jack?
Yes.
The single-lane culvert then resulted in what?
Design, and particularly the water handling. As I explained, we have a double box culvert.
So real quick, they changed the design. So we went from 2 lanes and whatever they had. So now in order to get the 1 lane, we had to make a double box culvert. Because of the permitting and because of the regulatory environment, we had to switch the design of the project to a double box culvert. Army Corps of Engineers dragged its feet, so we issued these emergency orders. The residents, the community chimed in and said, we don't want double box, we want single box. So now we have to scrap that design and go with a new design that has a single box. So now the emergency orders are no longer in effect because we've completely changed the project's design.
You can move the water back and forth. So when you go to a single box culvert, it changes that, which increases the cost. So that's when I came to the mayor and said, at this point, it's advisable to go and get a state grant. The bridge is eligible for a state grant. That will help.
So basically, all of these redesigns have cost us a lot more money. So Jack has suggested that we go get a grant.
That will cover the increased cost in the bridge.
So Jack, so the public can understand the projected cost, we had anticipated being $600,000
Yep.
by doing the double box culvert and keeping this a 1-lane bridge.
Yep.
When you're going to a single culvert, what's the price going to be now?
Well, just for the culvert itself is $900,000. $900,000. Then if you add in the incidentals,
By the way, that chuckle in the background is Chris Cosgrove snorting. I can't say the word chuckling. Scoffing at this whole thing. Like the whole project was going to be $600,000, but now the box culvert alone, never mind all of the rest of the project, is going to be $900,000. Because again, because of the requests of, I'll try to sugarcoat this, and I'll try not to poison the well, but because of the demands of a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people who live on and around that road.
Construction, inspection, engineering, contingencies at about $1.2 million.
1.2 million. So we went from a $600,000 project to $1.2 million because we want to maintain the rural aesthetic of the region, because we want everything to be rural, because we couldn't take a 2-lane bridge, right? It had to be a 1-lane bridge, and we had to disregard the recommendations of all of the regulatory authorities and the engineering firms and what all of the data says about safety. We have to ignore that and make it a 1-lane bridge. And then when you make it a 1-lane bridge, you got to make it a double box culvert instead of a single, or whatever they were going to do. They decided to go with a double box culvert. They didn't like the double box culvert for God knows what reason, which we're going to get to in a minute. They're going to reveal the reasons on this. So we had to go to a single box culvert. And now that we've gone to a single box culvert and a single lane, we've gone from a $600,000 project that could have been done, according to Mike Boucher, 2 years ago. And I'm kind of, on my experience in this town with how long these projects take, that sounds perfectly reasonable. It sounds perfectly reasonable for this project to expect this project to have been completed 2 years ago, when you could have broken ground in 2018. It's 2022. Yeah, that would mean project would break ground in 2018 and finish in 2020. For like a 30-foot long bridge. So over this tiny river. I think it's the West Aspetuck, which up at that point, at that far north, is a tiny trickle of a stream. $1.2 million because 6 or 7 people said, we don't like the aesthetics.
So that's going to double the price. Katie?
Jack, I just have a question. Did you say that just the box itself, the culvert thing, is going to cost $900?
The installation of a single box culvert as opposed to a double box culvert, they expected the increase in price to go up to $900,000. So if it was at $600,000, it increased by about
$300,000 more.
Some of that, a little bit of that is because of cost increases to the materials.
Thanks.
And then Jack, if we have to...
Let's go,
I'm
Brandon.
sorry, go ahead, Hillary.
I was wondering if anybody would speak to the environmental impact, the difference between the two?
There have been a lot of studies. I didn't go into the detail, but when Bartlett Judas originally recommended a double box culvert, DEP reviewed it. DEP would prefer to have a single box culvert. There were several emails.
So DEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, prefers a single box culvert, which is the third design, rather than the double box culvert.
Correspondence going back and forth between Anchor and DEP. Steve Gephardt is with DEP. I think Steve's since retired. Steve gave them recommendations. At the end, it seemed like he was okay with the double box culvert as long as they staggered the culverts. When I say staggered, you had one at an higher elevation and one at a lower elevation that allowed for the migration of fish and turtles and amphibians. So yes, there's been studies on that.
Chris?
How did we go from a double box culvert to a single? How did we get there? Because that changed everything,
Yeah.
right? How did we get from a double box culvert to where we're at now, I believe a single box culvert, which seemed to have changed everything?
Well, the problem was, the issues coming back and forth were that there was a lot of input from the public and the people who live there. They don't want a double box culvert. They want a single box culvert. And they corresponded with several state people at the state and other local municipalities about that. And they were citing environmental studies, as you said here, but they did not want a double box culvert. They want a single box culvert.
And did they order to the state, or did they come to the town first? Or?
They believe they did. Well, there was correspondence between them and me, their residents. We have an email chain that I send out to, or I'm part of, for many of the people who live up there. And I went up and I sat and I spoke with John Batista, who lives there, and I met with other people up there about this. And we discussed it. And I explained to them about we can make modifications to the actual design of the.
Okay, so we're kind of getting into a bit of a redundancy here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the playback speed to 1.5 times what we're going through here so we can get through this a little bit quicker. Let me know in the chat if it winds up getting too fast for you folks, because basically we've gone through everything that needs to be gone through from Jack Healy's perspective in terms of presenting the history of what's gone on and the engineering concerns that are involved with all of this, and the monetary concerns, of course, that are involved with all of this. The next step we have is basically the public comment that ensues after Jack's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the speed so we can get through this a little bit quicker. So let me know as we're playing this in the comments if this is too fast for folks.
The bridge, aesthetically, whether or not you want wood guardrails, just like we did with Mud Pond. Structurally, the concern is that if you go to if you change it from a double box to a single box, it changes the way you install it. We were also concerned about the stability of that, and there was some geotechnical information that Anchor was concerned about, but mostly they were worried about the water handling. I think I answered your question.
Yes.
Okay, so water handling is in the end what the concern is here with the double box.
I think there's an argument that the most environmentally friendly bridge is a free-flowing
Single box,
bridge.
sorry.
So this is a double culvert is not free-flowing. Is that the case, or?
I think if DP, to say what exactly, they would prefer a single box culvert, or actually an open bridge. Whether it's a single box culvert or just a poured bridge, they're okay with that.
So are we back?
So I think to answer Councilman Ram's question is when you're looking at a single culvert versus a double culvert, another thing that we wanted to keep in the thought process as well is what the residents who live in that area, what their wishes were, which was they wanted a single lane bridge. By going to a single culvert, the price goes almost double. By getting a state grant, and Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, we then now have to go to what's called AASHTO standards. AASHTO standards, Jack, could you let the council know if we have to go to AASHTO standards, now what happens?
When you accepted money from the state,
Okay, so now that we're applying for this grant, in order to qualify for this grant, I'm going to slow this down just a minute here so Jack can go over how this affects the project and if we're going to try to qualify for this grant.
you have to follow their criteria because they're funding the bridge, just much like Mud Pond. Once we do that, and I corresponded with Francisco Fadul and also Mark Burns at the state, and they confirmed this, that the bridge would have to then go to a 1.2 times the width of the stream, and also it has to be a double lane bridge. That's be 22 feet wide.
So in order to get this grant, we have to start right back where we started with a 2-lane bridge and then go to, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like they're going back to the original specs when it comes to the width of the bridge, which is wider than what's being presented here tonight.
It kind of takes away the rural nature of the area. And are we back at the mercy of the Army Corps of Engineers again now?
We have to go through the whole permitting process again.
Yep, and there's Chris Cosgrove visibly. Yes, you are correct. Okay, Mike, thanks for confirming what I just said. And that, folks, was Chris Cosgrove understandably groaning about this entire process. This right here is the reason we're doing this video, folks, because Chris Cosgrove's reaction, he's the most obvious reaction to this entire process. To meet AASHTO standards, yeah. Chris Cosgrove is basically just embodying in this reaction my reaction and what I think the entire rest of the community would say in response to all of this. So we're going to go back up to 1.5 speed because again, we got to get to the public comment here because that's where things get interesting.
I have talked to the mayor. I'm actually got Anchor working on this. We're trying to do a lot of this work as we go. I put an email into the state saying that we're trying to proceed with this. We will follow up with a grant application in March. We're preparing already.
Okay.
Well, we have a lot of things to consider. Is there a
God, I love Chris.
decision tonight about what we want to do next?
The sooner, we're at the point we're going to apply for the grant. We need to make a decision quickly. We've talked about this. I need to get all the documents in place, spend money to have the documents and preliminary design stuff ready to go in for an application.
And the big issue we're facing now, especially when talking with the Northville Fire Chief, if there happens to be a emergency issue up there, as we all know, that's like a 5-mile detour.
Fair point.
So it's very important that whatever we decide, that we need to make this happen for these residents. This bridge has been closed for way too long, and just a stagmire with an Army Corps of Engineers, it's a nightmare to say the least. Am I correct, Jack?
Yes.
Rebecca, am I reading it right? This meeting was almost 4 hours? Yes, there were 20 items on the agenda that night. We'll talk about that another time.
I would just raise the environmental thing again, as that is the West Aspetuck, a double A, it's one of our most precious bodies of water. So I would say that, with this influx of money, these funds, we've offset some other things. This might be an area where, we can make up that, I don't know, but that's.
So you've seen on our agenda was the $600,000 for art funds to help defray the cost of the bridge.
If I may, Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, I'd like you to.
We have it's not exactly akin, forgive me if you already know about it, but the Tamarack pipe replacement is somewhat similar to this. And we went on, again, I'm into finished my third year, and that started before I got here. And we were able to take that at one point. This is a pipe now. If you go up to Tamarack, you really don't see the bridge. It's just a pipe under the road. And originally, Army Corps had told us we had to put in a bridge, a concrete structured bridge, a box culvert. Again, when I first got here, the mayor asked if we could look at it, and we reduced it down to an aluminum pipe. We have the size. We were able to bring it down a little small. We had it all designed, ready to go out to bid, and then DEP asked us to go out and look for I think it was box with a certain type of turtle. We found out the turtle didn't exist there. They asked me to do a historic study on the pipe. Now, this is an aluminum pipe, an old steel pipe that was thrown in at some point. And then DEP actually came out and told me that what I was putting in was too small, and that I was restricting the water, and it was going to harm the wetlands. And asked me to raise the road, and we finally said, listen, we need to get this done. The pipe's failing. And
we do need to get this done. And I just want to pause here just so everybody understands. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the red tape and regulatory environment with just the environmental side of things, just with DEEP. So every time we have to start this whole process over, Jack's jumping through these hoops every single time.
And we went back and forth, and they approved what we did with some modifications. They approved our design. What I was trying to address is your concern. We do go back and forth with the environmental design with DEP. This is not like a one-lane thing where we just go forward. It's an interactive process.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I definitely would like to support environmental efforts. Here we have a chance to do something right. And we had a number of letters come to us.
We do.
So are they going to be entered into?
They're going to be entered not only into the public hearing, but also this is on the agenda for council.
Yeah,
Council
so-
for both as well.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the other is, I'm hearing that it was a thoroughfare for trucks going between 202 and Route 7. And my concern is that it's a double bridge, it's going to be really bad. And that certainly is not going to meet anyone's needs, and that's a big concern. So the 600.
So if that's the case, if people are writing in because there's semis running through that road and across that bridge, I have no idea how they would pass a weight limit. I have no idea how a fully loaded 18-wheeler is, first thing first, what it's doing on that road in the first place, right? Like maybe there's some weirdness going on with Google Maps and they're just blindly following the lady on Google Maps that tells you how to get from point A to point B. I have no idea why that would be the case. But if there really are 18-wheelers on that road, again, I don't know how they could possibly qualify for the weight limit, for the load limit for a bridge like that. In that case, we're not talking about a regulatory issue. We're not talking about a concern over policy. We're talking about a concern over enforcement. So the solution isn't these ridiculous demands for the bridge. We're talking about sending police officers up there when these sort of things happen and pulling these trucks over. So GPS sends them that way. Yeah, okay. So again, you park a couple of police officers up there for like a couple of weeks, and then truckers talk to each other. They talk to each other, and if they know that there's just going to be a cop on the other side of that bridge that's just going to immediately pull them over and say there's no way you're within the weight limit. And by the way, if a trucker does that, they just lost their license, and whoever they were driving for. Oh my God, the fines that they're going to be hit up with, and that are completely unavoidable, right? If they're a sole proprietor, if they own their own truck and are just contracting, man, their life is over. Their life is over for that. And again, these truckers, they talk to each other. They do. So I don't care what the GPS says. You pay a couple of cops a few $1,000s worth of 2 weeks, salary to just park a cop there for 2 weeks, and it's over. It'll never happen again. It'll never happen again because the truckers will talk to each other and say, Jim just got hit up with $300,000 in fines and had a 10-month suspension on his CDL and has to go in for retraining. Right? Like, that's all you need. We don't need to spend hundreds of thousands and what's probably going to wind up being millions of dollars and years worth of this bridge not being completed, this project not being completed, for what is an obvious matter of enforcement and not policy.
100,000 that you're looking for. Do you want to talk about that later?
Yes, because that would be on our agenda for the
okay.
ARP funds.
Okay.
Again, if I may, Mayor?
Absolutely.
The residents did ask me about that, and we went through to the traffic authority, because they're the way of making a no-through-truck designation. We went to the traffic authority, they approved the request. We sent the request to the state offices, the OSTA, Office of State Traffic Authority. It was denied. So we can't, only they can designate that, we cannot. They don't delegate that to the traffic authority. So we are looking at ways.
So folks, for everyone who keeps laughing at me when I say the libertarian principle of devolution, of authority. Like this is our road. This is our road. Why is the state stepping in and denying a request to block through traffic on our road? Our road. We're maintaining it. We're the ones that you and me are the taxpayers that are going to have to fund this boondoggle because it's going to become one if we wind up catering to the whims of a belligerent fringe minority. Right? That's what we're looking at here. So, yeah.
At that point, that's one of the efforts we did make.
So Jack, just so the public itself can hear one more time that's watching on TV, we did go to the State Traffic Authority
Yes.
to ask for that, and we were told by them,
Our request was denied. Yeah, we cannot make that a no-food truck road.
no. Thank you.
Why not? Why not?
And if it's okay with the council, normally when public participation has ended, we kind of stop. But this is a public hearing, and I see some residents that would like to address the council, if that is okay.
Yep.
Yep. You can just state your name and address when you address the council, please.
I'm John Batista from
Go, John.
Cherniske Road.
Okay, so we're at public comment. Let's slow this down so we can hear them clearly.
I sent all of you, the mayor and everybody on town council, the letter that said that probably one of the leading geotechnical engineers said that the idea that the soil samples called for a box culvert is bogus.
That's not what Jack said. That's not what Jack said. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the engineering concerns with it, when it comes to the underlying, not really even soil, but what's underneath, which would be going underneath these box culverts, weren't just an engineering spec from a contracted engineer, but they were part of the regulatory authority on this matter. It was part of when you go to the state, they tell you on certain things, and this is one of the things that one of the regulatory authorities and regulatory bodies at the state offices said to.
Problem isn't just a single box culvert versus a double box culvert. It's a four-sided box culvert.
Okay, so now we're moving the goalpost again from we don't just want a single lane bridge. We don't just want no double box culvert. We don't want the four-sided single box culvert.
Four-sided box culverts are the least desirable environmental way to go to a
Why?
river passing, because they cold, because they tend to fail, and a double form of it, they tend to clog.
Okay, so the idea is that if you've got one box, there's no obstructions. If you've got two boxes, where my two fingers meet, there's some sort of obstruction. Again, my response to that is just a groan. Like, at what point are you going to say your esoteric environmental concerns, as limited as they may be given, like, what is the actual difference between the two? What is the actual environmental concern that is the difference between the two? Let's put a number on that in some way, right? Like, in your head, put a number on that. Now, countervail that with doubling the cost of the project, endlessly delaying the project, and forcing the entire rest of the town to pay for, again, the aesthetic whims of a handful of belligerents.
So what we wanted all along was a bridge like we already have, a free-flowing Cherniske Road Bridge.
And you know what? You could have gotten that for $0. All we had to do is close the bridge. Just close the bridge and bam, there. That's the bridge you want? There it is. Just close the bridge. We're done. Abandon the road. From this end of the bridge to the other, we just go through the abandoned roads process. It costs us basically nothing. Mike, you can add a V-shaped cement bumper at the upstream side to direct water, and I don't know what DEG is.
1.2 times, that is the environmental standard that is just
Debris,
kind of
okay.
universally accepted. And of course, I don't know that we know exactly what the cost of that, but it has to be poured in place.
Oh my God. And now it's got to be poured in place. So we're already talking about, again, going from a $600,000 project to a $1.2 million project. We're now going to completely scrap the existing design and the design specs and the engineering reports and start completely over with a poured in place bridge, a poured in place form, which again, at these concrete factories, if you have the indoor facilities, you can pour concrete in January. You can't pour concrete on Cherniske Road in January in New Milford. You can't do it. It just can't be done, which means that you're going to have to wait till summer to even, again, remotely break ground on any of this.
and that's different. But believe me, taking a 21-foot box culvert, whether it's 3-sided or 4-sided, and putting it down there and putting it in, that's its own nightmare. Think about what's happened at Mud Pond. You know, the thing cracked. The roads are not meant for this kind of thing. Now, I don't know what.
I mean, not to appeal to authority, but we have these box culverts freaking everywhere. And it sounds like a cherry pick to pick this one instance where if I'm to accept what he says as truth, it sounds like a giant cherry pick to pick this one time where we had some sort of failure.
What else to say? But I try to write out the whole story there, and I'm pretty sure, and you see that
Mike Boucher, we are not sure what he's referring to there. Yeah, me neither.
it's supported by a wide variety of people on the road, and I think pretty much everybody's in agreement that this would be the best solution. I understand that
does he
there
mean
are
by
financial
best?
implications.
Of course there are.
But, you know,
But-
this is probably the finest river in the state of Connecticut.
Oh my God. The West Aspetuck, finest river in the state of Connecticut. Okay. All right. I don't want to jump down this guy's throat, but come on. Come on, folks. Come on. And it's, by the way, it's really easy to have all of these environmental concerns and just dismiss offhandedly. Yeah, okay, there might be some financial concerns to consider here too. That when you don't have to pay them, when it's the entire rest of the town that's going to be bearing the brunt of this expense.
All right, at this point. So take that under consideration, please.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, it's Adriana Riccio. I live on Cherniske Road, 72. Because not everybody here knows the whole story of this bridge. We know over the last 10 years or more, since the advent of iPhones and Android phones and mapping, online mapping, has increased the traffic on that road to the point that the monster tractor trailers that are just going through from Massachusetts over to New York State, they're not stopping in Connecticut, they're not spending their money. There's no businesses on that road from New Preston to Gaylordsville or over to New York State. There's no business, it's all residential. So they are impacting the infrastructure. And so one of our concerns is why we all gathered as a group on the road was because we are getting tired of the traffic and we want to preserve the rural character of the area. Plus,
could that be done with an enforcement change? Could that be done with, again, telling cops to go up there and say there's no way if she's what she's talking about is actually true, and I have a hard time believing it. It might be true, but I do have a hard time believing it. And Joe, I am watching your comments on YouTube, so just be aware I am watching all of that. I'm watching everybody's comments coming in from Facebook and from YouTube. But if this is actually the case, could this be resolved with a few $1,000s in paying police officers to go collect tens of thousands of dollars in fines for trucks that are obviously overweight for that bridge's weight rating?
you're spending all this money bonding for roads. It's going to just rip them apart. It's not just our road. It's happening all over town. Detours by car carriers. Have you seen a car carrier go down the road that doesn't go? There's no car dealers anywhere 10 miles in either direction or more. I've seen them. 8 cars, brand new cars on giant car carriers going down that road. So as a result of all that traffic, the bridge broke. Basically, it just broke. Maybe it was going to be replaced at some.
Okay, so she's just saying the quiet part out loud. That this bridge is not designed for, it's not weight rated for that type of weight. So we enforce the weight rating. Done.
It was built in 1930, but it lasted a really long time. And I don't see why we don't just invest in it now, do it the right way. And one of our reasons for wanting the single lane like it is now was to not increase traffic. We don't want more traffic. And I would think environmentally that you wouldn't want to increase emissions. We are facing climate change.
Okay, so time out. This is such a fallacy. If you increase traffic, you're not at net increasing traffic by the design spec of of a road, right? Like, what we're talking about here is changing traffic flows, not increasing overall traffic in New Milford. We're not increasing the number of vehicles that are driving through New Milford. We're moving vehicles from Route 7 to Cherniske Road, right? So let's just be clear on that matter. We're not actually decreasing on emissions, right, or whatever. We might technically be, because you can get better. You're at highway speed, you're getting better gas mileage. But this is a misnomer. These trucks aren't going to disappear and evaporate. They're just going to use another pathway.
I think everybody here understands that. We see the amount of rain we're getting, huge amounts, 5 to 7 inches in an hour. You know, the Arctic is melting, the Antarctic is melting. Why would we want to increase emissions by making a wider bridge? So if it means that you have to bond it, like you're bonding roads all over town, then just bond it, but do it the right way. Because if you don't do it the right way, it's just going to make everybody pissed off, and it's going to
Would she be as upset if they were EVs? Good question.
destroy the roads. Those roads cannot handle those giant trucks, not in any way, shape, or form.
So then we've got an enforcement issue, not a policy issue.
Anybody else would like to address? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Justine McCabe. I live at 88 Cherniske Road, right at the bridge. And we've it's been difficult living with it as it is, but we're definitely, I think all of my neighbors would agree that we would rather have this done properly than do something quick. We've waited this long. What I would really ask pointedly is why there is not the option of what we want, what we've looked at, what we've researched. My husband, John Batista, has talked to a soil scientist who says the soil is perfectly fine. The kind of cement that we have today could support that bridge.
Okay, and again, that's not an issue of the engineers that are the private sector engineers that are reporting on all of this. Again, Jack made this point. It's the regulatory authority. So just real quick, there's some comments that are coming through. Patrick Lewis, no through truck sign, end of story. I don't know if this is what you mean, Patrick, but I wonder if we just had those signs and just said, screw the Connecticut State Traffic Authority, right? We'll just have the signs. Even though the road isn't technically, even though it's not technically a road where through trucks are prohibited, even though it's not technically that, if we just have the signs, would that prevent the traffic from the trucks from going through there? And would we be in a legal quandary for just parking the signs out there? I wonder. That is a good question to be asked, and I don't honestly know the answer. Caravan delivers cars to, God damn it, I hate you, Facebook. Refreshing the scroll. Caravan delivers cars to customers on car carriers. Okay. Mike, we can't legally put up those signs without consequences. Well, I wonder what those consequences are. That's all I'm saying. Okay, Hillary. Read about the West Aspetuck AA rated river. It's New Milford's cleanest, best rated, a very important waterway. Read. Okay. All right. Hillary, I'll read it. All right. So never minding all of that, I will read that. But I think the point here is made. I think the point here still stays the same.
You know, to replace it as it was. Why isn't there an estimate at least of replacing it as it is with a modernized version? An open span bridge with, that has built in place the concrete. I would really request, as a person who is affected by what happens, that you have
all of us are, the taxpayers are as well,
estimate for that, as well as the other ones that you seem to be pushing for. So I really request publicly that you have that kind of assessment made. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jack, did we get a estimate on this type of construction, or can we get that?
We can do that, Mayor. Because right now we're in the preliminary design phase. What we're working off of is that I asked the consultant to go back to their original design work and the information they had, since they had designed, worked on a double lane bridge before, and I asked them, to give me a single span bridge, a single span box culvert. It doesn't take much more for them to do the calculations and give me that estimate.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else that would like to come before the public hearing? Yes, sir. Real quick, Amy DeMuth, how about the steel structure like they have over at Bowles Bridge, not allowing vehicles
over certain heights to pass through. Just a thought. We could do that without a steel structure. We could do that without, because I know what you're talking about, but my God, the expense that would come with that. All you would have to do if that's the cheat you want to use, if that's the cheat code you want to install in this video game, you just get 2 steel posts on one side of the bridge and drive those steel girders up into the air and say 8 feet, we're going to have an I-beam across the top. Boom. Boom. Don't know if it would be legal. Honestly, don't know if it would be legal. Maybe you say it's like maybe it's like the excuse you use is the garden club wanted in some sort of awning to go over the road for the aesthetic beauty of, and that's the excuse you use so that you can get that so that the trucks don't drive through there. There's to me, it sounds like an enforcement issue because the bridge is obviously not weight rated for these trucks. So that seems to me to be the most straightforward way around this, but maybe there are other loopholes to circumvent this.
My name is Chris Schrenberg. I live on,
Real quick before he talks, Patrick Lewis, why is the East and West Rivers rated differently? The environmental, I'm guessing, I haven't read the reports, but I'm guessing it's because the East Aspetuck originates from Lake Warramog, which is not the cleanest body of water there is. And generally speaking, when you originate from a standing body of water, you don't wind up with downstream the cleanest water.
Frenchman, Cherniske, the bridge. All I gotta say is that the Frenchman's Road can't handle the traffic anymore. It just can't handle it. The other thing I can say is that there's a lot of
Frenchman.
people.
I showed you guys where Frenchman was at the beginning of this video. It's right next to the Cherniske Road Bridge, and he's saying that, I guess what he's implying is that in order to get around this bridge, some people are going up Frenchman's Road.
The 3 neighbors that spoken that want it done as fast as possible. I've given up with trying to make it a 2-lane bridge. Don't care. Don't care if it's 1-lane bridge. Don't care if it's 2-lane bridge. But as you guys always do, you guys always look to not what's today, but 80 years from now. The last bridge was put in 55, not 1930s. It's got to be able to last 80 years. No farms will be in the valley in 80 years from now. It will be a suburb. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
So I kind of agree with him. I don't know. Our growth rate does not suggest that it's going to be a suburb up there anytime soon. Patrick Lewis, this guy's public comment is spot on. Yeah, except for that last statement about suburb in 80 years. Maybe 80 years is a long time, maybe. But outside of that, I mean, I'm kind of in agreement with him. At some point, you just got to build a bridge.
Anyone else who would like to address the public meeting? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's public meeting.
Okay, so now you guys know what happened in that public meeting. Now we're well informed in this process, right? We've heard from the public, we've heard from the residents, and the last guy who spoke brings up what I think is the obvious takeaway from all of this. At some point, and this is a lesson that everybody has to learn when you in business and in life, there is a point, there's a time, a place, and a way to say no, right? One of the things that I had to learn when I was running one of the businesses that I was running years ago was that you don't ever kowtow to belligerence, right? When a client comes in and is just being obnoxious or making requests that are utterly impossible or just plain ridiculously preposterous, there's a time, a place, and importantly, a way to say no. And in my way of thinking, if we're not there with this bridge, man, are we close. Man, are we close. Man, is it time to start looking into where is the line? Where is the line drawn where you say, you know what? No, we're not adhering to this squeakiest wheel gets the grease policy anymore, right? PPAS, you do have a mandate from the voters. We talked about this at the beginning of tonight's stream. And again, I'm going to keep pointing to the scoreboard until I don't have a reason to. I don't like doing this, but scoreboard 73-27, right? Jack Haley is in his job, is in his position ostensibly because, Pete, you have faith in his decision-making. You have faith and trust in his recommendations and in his ability to handle this process. The community elected you, Pete, ostensibly 73 to 27 because we have faith and trust in your decision-making process when it comes to all of this. And if you didn't have trust in Jack Healy and his recommendations, you would just fire him because that's a certain level of faith that you have to have in that position, the DPW director. And if we didn't have faith in you as a mayor to make these important decisions on our behalf, and when it comes to keeping Jack employed, when it comes to extending that level of trust from the community through the office of the mayor and to Jack Healy, then you don't win elections 73 to 27, especially not in a town where, again, I hate doing this, but more registered Democrats than Republicans. So at some point, the buck has to stop somewhere. And quite frankly, Patrick Lewis, you brought this up, and I'm at that point. I'm at that point where this project, just get it done. Just get it done. Just look at Jack Healy and say, your job as DPW director is to get that bridge fixed. We got a summer to get this done. We've got design specs. Pick a recommendation. We have faith in you to do the thing that is the right thing for New Milford, not for the 4 or 5 people that are coming and complaining about aesthetic concerns, which what it effectively works out to. The town of New Milford is, if they knew what was going on here, I guarantee you would not respond with, yeah, sure, let's just spend untold millions and have it never get repaired. No. Jack's job is to do Jack's job. And Pete, your job as mayor is at this point, again, because there's a mandate from the electorate, is to at some point say to Jack, just do it. Just get it done. Let's just get this stupid thing done. And to the members of town council who end up seeing this, again, I'm not relating to you just my opinion on this matter. If those people want that tiny little 30-foot long bridge to be the Taj Mahal of bridges, then they can pay for it. If government can involuntarily take your money, accept money from you involuntarily, obviously they can accept it from you voluntarily, right? So, and it's obviously true because at the beginning of every town council meeting, there's one of the agenda items is the consent agenda. And there's almost always, like the New Milford Police Department is requesting permission to accept a donation in the amount of, or the Parks and Rec is requesting permission to accept a donation in the amount of. To the folks on that road, the town of New Milford will pay the $600,000 to just get the bridge done, right? And if at this point cost overruns bring it up to $900,000, fine. But get it done. And if you guys want to spend your own money to make that a $3.5 million bridge that doesn't get done for another 10 years, your money. And by the way, I know it's cynical as all hell, but there's a way that with no expense that we could just end the truck traffic and give you exactly the bridge that you wanted, which is just exactly the bridge that's already there. And that's Jersey barriers on both sides of the bridge, abandon the road, abandon the stretch. You don't want it repaired. You don't want it done in a timely manner. You don't want it done for a price that is actually remotely reasonable, that is going to be even considered remotely reasonable by you guys, the voters. Then you figure it out. We're going to abandon the road, and if you guys want to put a bridge in there, you do it. You do it. Beyond whatever it's going to cost to actually get the job done at this point, I as a taxpayer am not going to be willing to spend any more damned money on this. And I'm sorry, but you have to be splitting a hair. You have to, at this point, be splitting a hair in terms of the environmental concerns with a double box culvert versus what's being what's being demanded of these 4, 5, 6, 7 people. You saw somebody who spoke, who had the guts to speak out against what was not just the majority, but what was the unanimous opinion of the people that showed up to that meeting, who lives on Frenchman, right next to where this bridge is, right? Right next to where this bridge is now closed. And I'm sure that guy's commute is now, I'm sure that guy would rather have that bridge available to just get across the bridge so he can get to certain places, because that's not an easy part of New Milford to get in and out of. So that's where this whole project stands. At this point, I'm just about ready to call the whole thing a boondoggle. The whole thing has been incredibly frustrating, and this is why I wanted to go into this, because it's a long history, and the community is not going to be in favor of this. You, the voter, voted, again, elected this town council the way it is in landslides. So, again, I'm doing this just to apprise everybody of what's going on. So I always close with some Q&A. So let's see what everybody has had to say since I started rambling. All right. Let's see. This guy's public comment is spot on. That's where we left off. Let's see. Sorry, folks. The scrolling on my end is kicking my butt. Mike, how many farms have disappeared in just our lifetimes? A lot, but that's also really, really, really far out in New Milford. And I did give the caveat that in 80 years, yeah, okay, maybe. It's tough to say what's going to happen to that part of New Milford in 80 years. So plausible that it becomes suburban. I just don't think that that's likely to be the case given just the topography of the area. Mike Boucher, Jack is right on with his decisions. Mike, I can't say that anything Jack's done or said is something I can disagree with. Not to elicit the fallacy of appeal to authority, but Jack, I don't know what my complaint would be with Jack at this point. You know what I could do? I could laud Jack for his unbelievable patience throughout all of this. Like Mike Zarba, I thought he was fine from an engineering standpoint, but no diss on you, Mike, but Jack has displayed a level of patience that is it's a level of patience I certainly wouldn't have, as you guys have seen, and it's a level of patience I don't think hardly anyone would have. So if there's something to say about Jack and his character and his handling of this whole process, his patience is unbelievably laudable. Absolutely, Washington moved 2 bridges to next year due to supply issues. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Anyone read the environmental study from 80 years ago? Yeah, I guess this is sarcasm because yes, there obviously wasn't one. All right, so let's go to YouTube and see what's happening on YouTube real quick. Bulls Bridge, Cornwall. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are covered bridges at Bulls Bridge in Cornwall, but to do something like that would be just, oh my God, the expense involved with all that. Paul would have liked to have heard from Councilmember Lundgren because she lives on the road and would have been a good spokesperson for the residents there. Guess she didn't want to appear. Well, I mean, she does live on there and she is a town councilman, so it would have been interesting to hear her thoughts. Joe, how much is it per taxpayer? I don't honestly know, but again, if this is the practice that we're going to establish, I'm not a fan, and I don't think we should be doing squeakiest wheel gets the grease. Because then it's just a matter of who can be the most obnoxious. The most obnoxious, loudest person wins. And that's just not a proper way to do governance. Hillary, wrong. It's a huge difference environmentally between free-flowing bridge and 3 or 4-sided culvert. This is an environmental issue. It's an environmental issue that's running headlong with us, the taxpayer. Remember that death by starvation is just as bad as death by environment. And if you take these things to their logical end, which is what we're going to be doing if we're going to be making these environmental claims, what you have are competing concerns. One is millions of extra, what's probably going to wind up being hundreds of thousands of extra dollars. And it's probably going to wind up being millions of dollars, let's be honest. And years of delay over going from this to this. Again, over what is an environmental preference. So no, just, this has to be splitting a hair. This has to just be splitting a hair. And no, I'm not going to cite my sources. I'm going to cite common sense here. We have to be talking about the splitting of a hair when it comes to going from this to this. Patrick, go hug a tree. Come on, Pat. Come on. Mike, he is the most patient person I know. Yeah. Again, read the sustainability, Hillary. Again, read the sustainability report, OBNM. I'm not sure what that means. And our important watersheds. Okay. Again, you have a competing concern. Hillary, if this bridge cost $100 quadrillion, Would you bankrupt the entire world to go from this to this? Would you? Honestly. Answer that question honestly. If this was going to cost you a Death Star, quintillions of dollars, more productivity than has ever existed in the history of mankind, would you starve the entire planet to go from this to this? And I know what the response is going to be. That's ridiculous. Okay, why? Why is it ridiculous? Again, because these are competing concerns. Even if I'm to accept that this is something that's meaningful, right? We have the competing concern, the interest of the residents, right? The people who are ostensibly, governing of the people, right? Right? And you weigh that against the environmental concern. Like these are the concerns of the community, and the community has in many ways spoken in that regard. Rebecca, and the safety issues of delaying ambulances, and that's a legitimate concern. And the safety issues of delaying ambulances and fire department will be severely delayed getting to those areas with the bridge out. If it's a truly severe delay, and I know the area, I can't imagine it's not a pretty substantial delay. Imagine somebody having a heart attack. Imagine the difference between somebody living through that heart attack and not living through that heart attack is EMS crews getting there 2 to 3 minutes earlier. Imagine if that's the case. Imagine the outcry you're going to get when somebody says, my father Frank died because this bridge didn't get completed because of these environmental concerns. Again, we have competing interests. That's what these are. That's all I'm talking about. Not will be, but are. Okay. So yeah, that's in reference to safety issues. Let's go to YouTube real quick. 600,000 over 23,000. I don't think 23,000 is 23,000 the number of taxpayers. I don't know if that's actually the case. Hillary Ram, 1.2 million on the dam. We have taken millions and millions in bonds for roads and bridges. Yeah, but it would have been 1.2 million no matter how we did this. Right? The state came in and said, you got to do something about this. And well, we could either tear it down or we could rebuild it. And it was effectively the same price up front to rebuild it as it would be to tear it down. And from what Jack Healy explained, the long-term consequences were that it would be probably more expensive to tear it down than to repair it. Patrick, I don't know, straight up 202 is faster than snaking through Mariel. I mean, yeah, 45? Like, I don't know what the truckers are doing. I don't know why GPS is sending them on that road in the first place, right? Like, and this may be a Google issue. Maybe the money is better spent, basically spent on what's it called? Not litigation, but you spend it to buy, let's call it like a political inroad to Google, so that you can basically pay off Google to just not have that as part of their GPS routing, right? To just not have. Just tell the GPS at Google, don't go through Cherniske Road. Like, I wonder if it would be cheaper to just, again, buy those inroads. Just basically, not bribe, but like pay for those inroads to get into Google and change those directions. I'm speaking of ambulance and fire response. I mean, I get it, but let's bring up the map again. Let's bring up the map again real quick. Here, let's bring up the map. And we're going to close this all up in just a minute here because we're getting kind of late. So this is the map. All right, that's the bridge that we're talking about. So let's can we put a point here? What's here? No, we can't. Give me a point. No, we can't. All right. Well, so that's where we are. That's Cherniske, and it would mean going. To get to 202, you're going through New Preston on 45 and down New Preston Hill Road to get to here, rather than, let's say, well, the ambulance barn is New Milford Community Ambulance. Would it be faster to go into town or across Wells Road and up the backside of Park Lane West to get to 202? Would that be faster to go all the way up 202 and go around than to do something along the lines of like Sawyer, well, it would be you'd go through Sawyer Hill. If the bridge is out and you're trying to get to Frenchman's, I would guess it probably would be faster to go up Squire Hill to Cherniske Road, but the bridge is out, then you're zigzagging through Marial, which has got to be substantially slower to get to some place like Frenchman's. So, all right, let's try to wrap up. Let's try to wrap up the Q&A here, and we'll go ahead and move on. Sawyer north to Cherniske. Yeah, that's kind of what I looked at. YouTube. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like you guys are all done. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hillary, if you're still watching, yeah, still would love to schedule a time to have a conversation. Friday night, since it's the Pro Bowl, I won't be competing with football, so we will actually do another episode of the Mike Sennello Show on Sunday night at 7, since we'll be competing with the Pro Bowl, which, come on, don't watch the Pro Bowl. Give me a break. The next weekend, of course, is the Super Bowl, and since I've gotten my butt kicked by football over the past few weeks, all right, we're not gonna have a standard show, and I'm not gonna try to compete with the Super Bowl. So somebody suggested I do something of a halftime show. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Let me know, send some messages to me on Facebook. Let me know what you guys think about what I should be doing for the Super Bowl. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. There is a town council meeting that's going to be happening next Monday, so that's a week from tonight. I believe. No, actually, it would be 2 weeks from that. So probably not going to be able to do a Monday night episode after the Super Bowl instead of doing our standard Sunday night. So things to look out for. Also later this week on my channel, Mike Reads on YouTube. So you can just type in Mike Reads, all one word. We're going to be continuing in our series on Ludwig von Mises's The Anti-Capitalistic Mentality with our third read in the book, which is going to be chapter 3. That'll be released later this week on that channel. And that's what we got coming up. So again, genuinely grateful for everyone who watches. Happy to have people from all sides of the aisle come. It's really cool, Hillary, if you're still watching, that we're getting, Democrats, elected officials like Hillary on. Mike, thanks for watching, and thanks especially to Mike Boucher for chiming in to make corrections when they needed to be corrected and to confirm some of the things that I've said as well. And thanks everyone who stayed tuned throughout all of this and who continues to watch. We'll be back next week. See you then. Good night, everybody.